All right. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another episode of BlockFi Live. I'm not at my normal desk in my bedroom. I'm in the kids' room right now, recording, but I'm really excited for the guest that we have on the show today. Kevin Rose is an entrepreneur, investor, and thought leader. He's currently a general partner at True Ventures, and Kevin has a ton of accolades. He's been named one of the top 25 most influential people on the web, a top 25 angel investor, and he's been on the Jimmy Fallon Show, Charlie Rose Show, and covers of Inc. and Business Week magazine. So, Kevin, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. I know we're both in weird situations right now in terms of where we're recording this, so I'm glad we were able to get together and do it.
Yeah. So, first off, tell us about your situation. I mean, how have you been managing through this wild period of time?
Yeah, I think that we have two young kids, and we're here in Portland, Oregon. So for us, it's just really um, we've been very lucky in that Portland and Oregon in general is sandwiched between two really hot spots, and we have kept our infections down here in terms of COVID. And it's just been, like everybody else, just kind of limiting exposure and doing the best we can. We've got I've I've one parent left, 80-year-old mom, and she is compromised in a couple different ways. So it's challenging. It's challenging how to figure out logistically how to get over there, deliver food, obviously not infect her, things like that. So but we're making do, and obviously there's a whole slew of different things going on right now in the world, and just trying to take it all in, and certainly learn and read, and just there's a lot of reflection right now that's going on, I would say.
Yeah, and spend time with the kids. That's been the silver lining for me. I've gotten in more time with the kids over the last 3 months than I did in probably the year prior, which is definitely something that we've enjoyed over here.
Yeah, it's really awesome. That is the one thing that's really cool about not traveling as much, is I do get to spend that time with my daughters, and they're 2.5 and a little over 1. So it's chaos, but at the same time, it's like you just never get these moments back. So it's really fun.
Yeah. So I definitely want to talk about some of your views on the cryptocurrency sector as someone who's not, you might be the first guest we've had on the show who's not full time in cryptocurrency. So you're bringing a bit of a, part time or outside perspective, but a very informed perspective to the conversation. But before we get into that, maybe just for the folks who don't know you, tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure. I have been kind of a serial entrepreneur over the years, and probably best known for launching the social news site Dig back in 2004, which was the first social news site, launched about 6 or 8 months before Reddit did. And we had a lot of fun battles over the years, and eventually Reddit launched some really awesome, innovative features that ended up winning and bidding us as a company. But that was a fun road that I was involved in for about 10 or so years. Became a technology investor. Was very lucky to be in the Bay Area and surrounded by other entrepreneurs during the whole Web 2.0 boom. And so part of just started dabbling in tech investing, and got started there, investing in mostly the Web 2 companies like the Facebook and Twitter and Square and a handful of others that were all coming up around that time. And then went off and sold a company to Google. Was moved over and worked as a GP, a partner over Google Ventures. Spent 3 years there, investing in other technology startups. I was leading all of our cryptocurrency efforts, largely because no one thought it was going to be a thing. It was like, I think if you remember back when it was first getting started, a lot of people laughed at it and called it tulips and everything else. And so, I led our investment in Ripple, which was their first round of financing many years ago, while I was at Google Ventures, and then later went off to start a couple other companies. Love to dabble, love to experiment, love to build products. I created an intermittent fasting app called Zero, which is now a pretty big top 25 app in the App Store, in health and fitness, which has been fun to watch that grow. And then more recently, just a full-time partner over at True Ventures. So True had backed a handful of the companies that I had built in the past, and got to know the team over there. Just love the team at True, and decided to join them full-time as a investing partner. I think given just my days of building are kind of like with kids and everything else going on. I'm just like, I really enjoy the role that I'm in now, where I can work with entrepreneurs, still have a position on the field. I'm not like actually on the field, I'm more on the coaching side, but at least I'm still in the game in some capacity. So I'm enjoying this stage of my career.
Yeah, that's awesome. So tell us a bit about True Ventures as a firm, and what types of things do you all invest in? Are there specific areas of the market that you specifically cover? Um,
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so True's been around for quite a while now. We have over we've let's see here. I guess it's been total years. It's been over. I'd have to go back and check exactly when the founding date was, but over 300 companies now, and several billion under management. Basically, the founding kind of thesis around the fund was to invest in extremely early stage, high risk ventures, and so that means typically a seed or Series A, $1 to $3 million investment, and every investment is about 1% of our fund. So our primary fund is a $300 million fund. We invest, like I said, when you're only investing around 1% of the fund, we want the entrepreneurs to take as much risk as possible, and just really kind of swing for the fences and try unique and novel ideas. Most of them won't work out, and we're totally fine with that. I'd almost rather find the right entrepreneur and back them twice. So that's led to some great companies being built over the years. I should also mention there's another fund that is associated with Truth, our kind of secondary later stage fund, and that is not for later stage companies, but it is for companies that we invested out of the primary fund that are then graduating to later stages of financing. So it allows us to do all of the follow-on investments. So a good example of that is why your first check may be 1 to 3 million. A company like Peloton, we put in 50 some $million into that company before they IPO'd. Same goes with Fitbit and Blue Bottle Coffee, and just a bunch of just like great brands that we've had an opportunity to work with over the years. So it's been it's I love the fund because it is they do take on so much risk, and we know that, so the pressure on the entrepreneur is really off. They've invested in companies of mine that have both failed and succeeded financially, and they're completely fine with that because that's the model and that's how it works. And they're looking for there will be a handful of companies that are kind of quote unquote fund makers, and a lot of them will actually go down to nothing, and that's the way it was, the plan basically. And we've just really kind of enjoyed that path, and that working with founders in that way. And so it's not really about being the loudest fist on the table, like this must work. It's really about coaching the entrepreneur and making sure that they can have an open and honest conversation with us. They have equal access to the partners. So, we don't do deal attribution. If you come on the website, you won't see which deals I've done versus another partner. We kind of want to create an environment where if you come into True and you need to talk to a certain partner because they have an area of expertise that is would be meaningful for you to have their insights on, then you have direct access to that person. So it's just a different type of fund. I would say it's a very low ego fund, and just a very healthy environment to work in, which I can appreciate.
Yeah, that's awesome. And have there been any major changes for y'all as a firm going through the COVID scenario? And is there any specific advice y'all are giving to your portfolio companies at this point in time? We're now starting to enter the reopening phase a little bit, and maybe just talk a little bit about any learnings that y'all had or changes that you made to new investments or thinking about follow-ons as a result of what we've been through over the last few months.
Yeah, I think that the one thing that we have figured out is that it's rather than do a kind of a top down driven, like this is the way you should be thinking about it. We always pull from our entrepreneurs. So we have like a little private internal, newsletter and group of 300 plus people that are essentially there to try and support each other. So the second this started happening and there was the lockdowns and all of this was going on, we started holding weekly Zoom calls with the founders that wanted to have them. And you could basically, as a CEO or founder, bring up anything in this private, room. And we weren't recording it. It was just all off the record. And so there was a whole slew of different challenges, and every business was facing something, slightly different than the next. So some of our businesses were actually doing quite well, and this was a great kind of boom for them. And that, we have a great hair color company called Madison Reed that does really healthy kind of organic hair color from home. It's like imagine you go into a grocery store to buy hair color. It's not that. It's like actually professional, high quality, like chemical free hair color, and it was doing great. And great business. And then COVID hit, and all of a sudden it just exploded. I mean, just
We've had
everyone
people,
dyeing their hair from home.
we've had people on the team dye their beards, dye their hair.
Yeah, I mean, it's all
We've
happening at
seen that
home, and
firsthand.
so yeah, so that's an example of a company that just like went the other direction, right? And so they're dealing with a whole different series of challenges. And then some companies are going to go have to lay off half of their staff or more, and that's a whole nother set of challenges. And how do you do that remotely? And how do you do that in a way that gives people the respect and dignity that they deserve? And so just walking through and putting together resources, best practices, documents that you can kind of refer back to and figure out collectively like how to solve some of these problems, and including on when to return. Like there's no, one thing that we've figured out through a series of surveys is employees, they tend to um, have drastically different interpretations of what's going on. And so some employees are like, okay, I'm fine, I'm ready to go back, it's been forever, put me back in the workplace. Others are like, there's no way in hell I'm going back until there's a vaccine out. Like there's just like, and there's no, I don't think there's any right answer here,
Yeah,
but it's important to take into consideration all these different viewpoints, right, when you're making a decision. So
yeah,
um, things like that, helping companies source the right quality of and type of masks that they're going to need for this. And then just like, collectively sharing how we're doing it in a thoughtful and safe way when it comes to reopening, I think has been something that we're continuing to drive and encourage entrepreneurs to do.
yeah. That's great. And it seems like it'll be a moving target for a while, and it's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, it's just going to vary so much from region to region and place to place.
Yeah. So let's talk about cryptocurrency a little bit. I have a tweet here that I think you put out in 2014. And the tweet is talking about how if you built Dig today, you would make votes a proof of work system to mine a Dig alt currency, and there'd be a way to share revenue created from the ads back to users using the Dig currency. Um, was that one of the first times you were really thinking about cryptocurrency, or take us back to the beginning for you in terms of cryptocurrency, and then maybe walk us through a little bit of the evolution of thoughts you've had about it since first learning about it.
Yeah, the beginning for me was obviously just hearing about Bitcoin launching and all of that going on, and I didn't. Um, it was tough. There was no really like really crazy good wallets back then, and you had to download the entire blockchain to your computer. And I remember I tweeted out an address because I created my first Bitcoin address, and I said, "Would anyone send me some Bitcoin here?" And I immediately lost the keys and everything. And you can still look at the address, and it's holding many Bitcoin in there. Like it's on my Twitter account. I just don't have access to that anymore.
Oh man,
But it's like I I just started. I thought it like anything else. I was just like, well, this is fun to play with. And I wasn't early. I'd heard about it, but I didn't really. I was like, I didn't pay attention until it was probably at around, I don't know, $8 a coin or something like that. I think early was like 10, 20 cents, 5 cents, whatever. Um, But when it was a few dollars a coin, I started to pay attention. I started to buy some. And then, I just realized that it was super utilitarian. It was super geeky. It's really hard to get mass consumer adoption when things are so, um, like you have to paste this string of letters and numbers to someone to send an address. Like there's no ease of use here. Like it's super scary.
Right.
Like, did I paste the right
US.
one?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's I basically just thought of it as something that was fun to track and kind of do a little day trading on and things like that. And so I just left it alone for a while. I would say that tweet was around when I started realizing that there were so many alternative currencies, but none of them actually had really any real use case. Like
Hmm.
I couldn't. There's just a slew of garbage out there that, in terms of all the altcoins, that I don't believe. I think it just really muddies the waters quite a bit, which is a shame. But I was thinking about, at that time, just all of the work and effort that users and value that users, deliver to platforms. So when you're creating content, like you're the person building the product, right? Like when you're submitting a news story to Reddit, or if you're posting a piece of video or photo to Instagram or TikTok, like you're the one doing the heavy lifting there.
Yep.
There's obviously infrastructure behind the scenes to support all of that, but why are you not being compensated for that? So it was always just like a mystery to me. Like, yes, there's like, YouTube ads, and I think that's probably the thing that comes closest to that. But in my mind, I thought about, well, okay, if I had to build a social news site where there are many different types of ways um, to provide value. That can be the submission of new articles. It can be removing spam. It can be leaving a comment, or voting down a comment, or voting up an article. There's a bunch of different things you can do within this ecosystem that would be considered to be positive activities for the system. Like, why not allow these people to be compensated in this currency, and then also earn and be compensated in it, but then also participate in that, um, if you wanted to sell that currency out in exchange for ads, you could purchase ads directly with that currency as well. So in other words, I have a social news site. It has, tens of millions of people using it. And then I want to buy an ad on it. Like somebody else wants to buy an ad on it. How do they buy an ad? They don't buy an ad from the site. You'd buy an ad from the user by purchasing the currency that the site takes. So it would be like a way to cash out your currency to other forms of fiat, which I thought was interesting. So there's been some, Steam and some of the other projects that have been out there have kind of dabbled in this. So I think there's been quite a bit of movement on it in the last few years, and now Reddit is starting to embrace, subreddit cryptocurrencies, by subreddit, which will be fun and exciting to watch. So I do believe that there's something to this, though. This idea of, compensating users for what they're contributing to your ecosystem.
Yeah, and you've seen Reddit do something. You've seen Brave, the browser, with their BAT token, come up with a somewhat similar concept. So it's definitely an interesting area to watch. Another part of the cryptocurrency market that we're really interested in at BlockFi, and that we've been maybe a bit ahead of the curve on at times, is the stablecoin market, which has grown from the end of last year of a market cap around $3 billion to today now a market cap north of $10 billion. What are your thoughts on using blockchain payment rails to just move around traditional currencies? And do you see anything exciting happening in that part of the cryptocurrency sector?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly have been a big fan of this type of protocol for a while, specifically around Maker and Dai. So I've been, following Maker for a long time, and it's, the fact that that can all be decentralized and pegged to the U.S. dollar in a kind of dynamic fashion is just a beautiful, architecture that they've created there. And so they were really the early. Well, I mean, you could say there was a couple others that were pegged to I can't remember what other platforms were supporting this, but there were a couple other stable coins around the same time.
Tether was
Uh,
one.
no, it was before Tether. It was a different platform that they were on though, that supported a bunch of different types of currencies on this one platform. I can't recall, but yeah, I think it's great. I mean, there's certainly scenarios where you think about wanting to move assets in a stable fashion cross borders without any loss of capital or paying any additional fees. Like it's a beautiful thing. I think decentralized finance products in general are ones to keep an eye on. It's definitely a very legitimate use case for cryptocurrency that is not just a store of value or a smart contract, which I think are two other great use cases. So I worry that some of the stable coins are actually they're not truly decentralized, and I worry that they could be seized. And there's some issues there with whether or not there's actually real currency to back them up. So I tend to be a fan of ones like DAI, where I can understand the entire system versus just having to believe that an audit's going to come through correctly and that the funds are actually there.
Hmm.
So I the one thing that I think is still lacking is that the average consumer is not going to feel comfortable having large sums of money there yet.
Yep.
Obviously there's a few issues around that. We have to figure out custody and what that means, and how that can be shared and potentially insured in some way. I think if you have your life savings at a traditional bank, that there is some insurance there potentially. I mean, obviously, if there's a run on the bank and insurance fails as well, there's some risk there. But at least there's that perceived backstop or safety net there if something were to happen. And you're also not walking around with your entire life savings in your pocket wherever you go. And so, we have to figure out that issue as well. There's put your hands up, hand me all your cryptocurrency, and if your phone can unlock and send everything you have all at once, like that's not a good, that's not truly safe. So um, it's early days though, and then this is the fun. This is when we figure all this stuff out. So it's not saying that I'm hating on the technology. I think it's great. It just needs another decade to like really get there.
Yeah. So, what else do you think? You've touched on a couple of themes already in terms of UX, in terms of safety for holding real amounts of money. Um, what are some of the other things that you see as hurdles to cryptocurrency being more widely adopted, or what are some of the applications that you think will help with adoption that you get most excited about?
I think the application that will help with adoption is the one that you're not going to know about. You just won't even know that it's cryptocurrency. When Square Cash moves over to crypto backend with all of the rails and everything being powered by some piece of blockchain and everything hosted, stored in stable coins, and does the average consumer, does the average babysitter that I'm paying, or an average consumer that's like sending some cash to a friend for a grocery purchase, like, do they really need to know that there's a stable coin with a piece of maker token being burned off on the back end? And like, of course not, right? Like, it's just going to be a trusted mainstream PayPal as Square as like big Fortune 500 that comes along and says, okay, now our back end is powered by blockchain, and this is what's going on, and we have additional insurance in place. And that, I believe, will be the moment when crypto sees mass adoption, not because of all of a sudden everyone decides I need to have a stable coin. I just don't think it's going to be. I think it's going to be uh, the back end railing and settlement system will be the first to go.
Yep, that makes a ton of sense. So you think we'll see leadership from uh, applications that are already in people's hands, whether it's traditional fintech or others who implement cryptocurrency technology or cryptocurrency assets in the background, and consumers don't even have to
Right.
realize that
Well,
it's being powered by.
well, think about all the overhead you have with traditional banking systems and the interest rates that we're able to see today, like the best ones. Like we've got some of these like fancy rates that are out there right now with like, um, American Express offers 1.5% or 1.3% now, and Marcus from Goldman Sachs offers 1.3%. Those have been falling, every other week. And historically, these interest rates have been just horrific for the most part. And then you look at what you're able to do in decentralized finance and a lot of the automation there, and figuring out that there is, in some cases like a 4, 5, 8, 10x difference between what banks are offering and what you're able to get through these new, more efficient, systems. And I think it's just going to be, it'll be this beautiful behind the scenes, like, oh, wow. So if I keep money with Square Cash, I'll get 3.5%. My bank's only giving me 0.1%. Right. And it's like, that will be a no-brainer for most people, especially if they can get some FDIC insurance or something behind the scenes to back up to 250K of those funds. I think that's just going to be, and they won't even need to know that they're dealing with stable coins at that point. It'll just be like, well, I just keep my money in Square Cash.
Yeah, for sure. Any other views on crypto? Maybe like if you have any contrarian views on crypto, like things that a lot of people in the crypto world believe that maybe you see a little bit differently that you would want to share?
Um, I would say that, well, a lot of the altcoin stuff, that a lot of the new projects that are launching, um, I feel like we're finally starting to get back to, let's build something that is not just, we went through this really weird stage there for a couple of years where it was like, okay, let's just clone something that's out there or do a slightly modified or better version of something that's out there and get it out as fast as possible, raise a ton of capital. And I feel like we're finally entering a stage where some legitimate products are starting to hit the market, like ones that have been under development for a while now. When you see coins like Solana doing 50,000 transactions a second, like on par with like, some of the bigger credit card processors out there, that is like beautiful technology. I love seeing that. I'm very excited for Filecoin to finally, hopefully, go live here at some point in the next few months. That'll be an exciting way to have decentralized storage in a new and compelling way that hasn't been done before. So there are nuggets of usefulness and utility here that I think are going to finally connect the dots and make some of this um, really kind of lay the foundation for what would be these next generation of products. It's nice to see a lot of the Ethereum upgrades going well and helping scale that project. I think all the decentralized finance stuff is really fascinating and a great place to, what you guys are doing is great. I've always enjoyed the product. It scares me. Like the interest rates seem too good to be true. It scares the crap out of me. So, but it's really cool, and it's fun to track. I just worry about these like smart contracts being written incorrectly, and then one morning I'm going to wake up and my balance will just be completely gone. It's like there's still a lot of fear, but that's part of the reason why you're getting a lot of the great interest rates, I guess.
Yeah, and it takes time. So I mean, um, there's a little bit of a divide between BlockFi and a couple others, and truly decentralized applications and slightly different risks as well. Um, but we won't go too far into that on this show because this is about you. So um, we've really enjoyed getting your perspective on crypto and hearing more about you. If someone wants to follow you and learn more about your views or get in touch with you at True Ventures, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
Yeah,
Or
just Kevin Rose on Twitter or kevinrose.com is totally fine. Either one of those have links to all the places that I hang out. But yeah, I would say just to kind of sum it up, like I'm very, very, very bullish on digital currencies in general. Like this is not going away. We've hit that point, as as I'm sure all these listeners know, that I believe that it's funny. I said this conversation still comes up where people will ask you like, "Oh, it's Bitcoin's kind of dead, and this stuff's going." It's like, no, listen. If you had to go and you're creating a country from scratch today, are you going to go out and buy printing presses? Of course you're not. You're going to say, I'm going to do digital currency from the get go. It's like, it is the future. There is no stopping that from happening. It's like, yeah, yes, it'll be a combination of things that some we predicted and some we didn't, but the train is left, and it's still a very, very exciting, fun space that I pay a lot of attention to and continue to invest in. We invested at True, invested in Bram Cohen's Chia project. He obviously created BitTorrent, and that's his new cryptocurrency that he's working on. And there's deals that we look at. I would say we probably look at a dozen or so deals a year that are pretty exciting, and say no to most of them, but every once in a while we'll invest. So it's definitely something that we're continuing to track and pay a lot of attention to, and here to deploy resources towards. We'd love to back other crypto related startups. I wish I would have found BlockFi a couple of rounds of financing ago. I would have loved to have invested. So it's really it's a fun space.
Well, everybody, you heard it here first. If you're working on something new or exciting, or you just want to get a really well-informed and super smart opinion on venture investing and cryptocurrency, definitely check out Kevin on Twitter or at his website that he mentioned earlier. Thanks again for having us, Kevin. We wish you the best throughout the rest of this crazy period of quarantine. And once we get on the other side as well, we appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me.